Live with the MX Lumber Channel, MX Broadcasting Network, part of Materials Exchange. That's mxlumber.com, where we are the first, the only digital exchange where you can come on match, move the money and move the product. We have the freight solution all built in. You only pay a match fee. There's no brokerage fee on this price. You see it matched to your location, from your location. Matt Lehman, who has Lehman's Lumber Guide. We join together each Thursday to have lunch with Lumbermen. Last week, we got to do it live in Omaha. And I got to tell you, Matt, there was a lot of people coming up, giving you a lot of love for what you do and chatting with them about how you've helped them quite a bit in this market. I think you had to feel pretty good about that, right?
Yes, I mean, for some reason, we've reached a celebrity status because of this half hour too. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean, it is exciting when you have people that come up and tell you that that what you're doing is worthwhile and it makes a difference. And I had one guy said, he said, I kind of feel like I need to start paying you commission for all the hundreds of thousands of dollars you saved me last year. And I said, well, you got my address, and so far I haven't seen a check. So I guess that was just a figure of speech.
So I'm usually right-handed, but I got to write left-handed this week because I signed so many autographs and patted myself on the back so many times I hurt my hand.
Yeah, pull your shoulder out of joint.
Yeah. So, hey, Nick is here from Chicago. Hey, Nick from Chicago. Good to be here. So please ask us any questions. Matt and I were chatting before this show, and we said, hey, we've gone over a lot of different things. God, we've got a lot of things when you go live and talk to people that you hear in person that we wanted to kind of bring to the market and talk about, but we really want to use it as an opportunity for people to ask questions, throw out comments, educate the community because, Matt had a great point. Matt, when you made that comment about the BCMC, and if you don't know what the BCMC show is, it's the Building Component Manufacturers Conference. It's tied in every year also with the Framers Summit. And so Matt and I were at the Framers Summit. Matt and the Materials Exchange crew had a booth there. And then we were at the BCMC show. And man, Matt, we gleaned a lot of information out of that conference that I never really thought about. Hey, Dennis from Encore Building Products, Springdale, Arkansas, great to have you on. And Steve from Kansas City, good to have you on. Matt, like you threw one thing about it's not the jobs and all that, although jobs were a big thing. Everybody was talking about how labor kind of moves like the wheat harvest, right? There's different rates that people will pay, and these guys aren't going to jobs for $5 an hour. They're moving for 50 cents sometimes.
Right.
So John,
I heard a thing this morning too. Got to consider the source CNBC, but they were saying that people are just quitting work and just going home because they're reprioritizing their entire life after COVID. And what I don't get is, like, if you're going to reprioritize your life and make things that are important, the things that you do for your day and spend your day doing, not working is not one of them. You can't just not work and just expect that somebody's going to pay your bill for you. And you still have to be responsible about your daily cost of living expenses. But they were talking about people that were just leaving their jobs, just quitting and leaving their jobs and going home and saying, I want to go seek my other self, or my inner sanctum, or whatever it's going to be. And there's some ethereal kind of stuff going on that I think is making people forget about the reality of paying their bills and paying their mortgage and paying their rent. And
well, that
seems to be everywhere. That seems to be evident everywhere except in the lumber business, where this group of people is so optimistic about how business is going to be in 2022. There's just the main holdup for buying more lumber is not money, and it's not even the labor issue. It's not COVID. It's just space. People made it quite clear, if they had more space, the money, the COVID, the labor, the whatever wouldn't be an issue. If everybody had another shed, they would fill it up.
Yeah, well, look about the labor issue. You can only sit at home and watch TV and eat Cheetos for so long, right? I mean, usually my motivator is when my wife says we got to pay our mortgage, right? So,
yeah, and that's coming due.
Yeah, it's like maybe the dock workers all decide to work from home too, right? And in
Yeah, but that's going to be fixed because Biden's made them so the unions got to go back and work 60 hours a week. So we're good on that.
hopefully that gets going. So one thing at the BCMC we talked about, you talked a couple things that I noticed, and you talked about space. So I haven't talked to too many framers since I kind of grew up in the lumber business years ago, but they're saying, "Hey, we're buying lumber now, putting it into facilities, and we never bought it until last year because we had people that we relied on for a long time getting out of orders, and then we just decided, hey, it's easier to internalize this process." And with that said, we realized that when we actually control the purchase of the lumber, plywood, and OSB, it helps us control the way the job flows, and it helps us create more power and more pricing power on a job. And I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And I think from what you and I have seen, the supply chain is getting a little bit tested by new incumbents in the market. Some of those being framers,
Yeah.
pine wood. Is that fair enough to say that?
Yeah, and I think it's already happened. The turnkey framers and builders, and especially multifamily builders, have become lumber market participants because they realize that they have the ability to buy some volumes of lumber in carloads or truckload quantities. And the thing that's unique about it is the reason they're doing it is their suppliers are just talking about risk all the time. And these guys apparently have enough money because they're connected from the developers or the venture capitalists or whatever. So they said, we'll just buy our lumber on our own. So if it's within our budget, we'll buy it, put it in a warehouse. It's covered. It's a done deal. We'll move on to the next project and don't have to come back in 6 months or 3 months before the job and buy the lumber package and deal with, can I get 90-day lumber locks or what are you out of now? And I think it's just, the frustration has driven more people into the actual supply side, so looking for the guys that are becoming their own suppliers, I guess. I heard of one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you're right. I mean, so for 20 years, everybody gave 3-month pricing rolling, right? 6-month pricing. When that stops, these builders, now they just said, hey, you know what? The best way here's how they know how to manage risk: put a whole bunch of wood on the ground at a place, right? And at least they've got 6 months covered or 3 months covered. Will they have some shrinkage or issues? Sure. So you said you heard one guy. Oh, question down below, Matt. This is from Steve. Steve, I'm going to butcher your last name, but I'll try it anyways. Simonowski. I probably Simonowski. Sorry about
That's what I'm
that.
going with.
Matt, what is your take on why the October correction is getting kicked down the road?
Well, I think a guy gave me a good analogy in Omaha last week. He said, we spent September filling up an empty bucket with inventory. And each week, every day you come to work, you sell a little bit. And what's happening is everybody's keeping the bucket full. So they're topping off. You're just like bartender come by, topping off your drink. And people are not doing what they typically do in October, is reduce inventories and just kind of digest what you did for September. But the bucket just keeps getting topped off. So what we're going to end up doing is starting the period of November to February, that's the most significant or predictable repeating uptrend. We're going to start that period with high inventories in the field. So it's likely what we'll see is just the market just continue. If it doesn't sit back here the next couple of weeks in October, then it's just going to trickle on higher because people just keep it. Just imagine that full bucket or your glass of wine just being topped off. You never run out. But the order flow to the mills is not the same as when we're filling up the buckets when we're topping it off. So it could have a flattening effect on that rising up the uptrend. If people get spring inventories now basically and just keep them, we're just going to trickle higher. But statistically, it's a sell-off month, and Steve, that's why it's getting kicked down the roads, because I haven't found many people that are out of a lot of things. They're out of a specific length, but nobody's out of all their 2x4s, or they're just not having a hard time. It's not running through them like liquid. And there's it's interesting. I heard a story yesterday from a multi-yard distributor or dealer up in the Michigan area. He said his business is just, he had 5 locations. He said, our business is just completely stopped. He said, don't know what happened, just completely stopped. And then you talk to somebody else in another part of the country and they said they're having their record week or record month, forever. So there's some splinters or broken pieces around this market that are, it's not all good all around the horn. So
Yeah. So where do you think? So from talking to people, there's different buckets of where inventory is, right? You got mills, you've got distributors, you've got office wholesalers that just spec in and out every now and then. Now you've got framers and builders, and then you have retailers, then component, then end user, right? So everybody only has so much space. The rest of it goes off into reloads. Pure distributors like the big national ones have plenty of wood. I drove by some of those on the way out to Omaha. In Omaha, again, I don't drive by them all the time. The one in Illinois, I drive by all the time. It had a lot of wood in it, right? I call reloads for clients to ask them if they can have more room. They're like, no, we're full of non-traditional people. What about, there's been a lot of consolidation with these large retailers over the last 6 months, and I think they're all trying to figure out um, how to run their inventories, because a lot of them were independent yards, get absorbed into a large group, and then they try to figure out who's going to buy, et cetera. Where do you think the inventory is sitting in the different buckets right now?
I think it's spread out everywhere. When I go do my little drive around thing, I don't see anybody out of lumber. And when we were in Omaha last week, I had several people came up and said, "Let me show you on my phone what my inventory looks like." And you scroll. I said,
You
"Is that
showed
the
me some of
same?
that. Yeah.
Is that the same rows?" And he said, "No, every one of those pictures is a different shed." And there was lumber stacked on the under the sheds and half a row outside the sheds, and they were talking about, it's almost people like bragging about how big their inventory is for some reason, but they're willing to take more. They just I think they like the idea of having that bucket full and not having to chase it. And prices are a third of what they were at the top, but we're still higher by $150 than we were before we started COVID. So the numbers are not cheap by any stretch, but they're certainly at a place where nobody's griping about the price. The builders aren't complaining about it. The multifamily guys are not. The remodelers are not. Everything's in a price range that's doable. It all pencils out, so there's no reason to not just cover it and be done with it. And I think a lot of that stuff that's spread out is probably already sold. It's just waiting to turn the dirt and
Yeah.
foundation in. So
Yeah, no, no. So, yeah, I think the inventory is all. Now, one of the differences, I think a lot of that inventory is probably, from what I hear. We had one of the guys on our show that was a big component manufacturer in the Southeast, and he said they have order file out 6 months, right? So
yeah,
when we go look at Southern Pine, which we will on your layman's lumber guide in a bit, you try to go out and buy 4-inch yellow pine right now, it's non-existent. People are paying up for number one prime for trusses and all that, right? So you got a 6-month order file. That stuff's coming in and going out. The only hard thing some of these trust builders have right now, from what I heard, was they have a job they've built stuff for, and that job gets delayed for some reason. So they have to somehow flex and go to another job they either weren't prepared for, or they got to send, the non-custom trusses or make some other floor trusses for another job, and then figure out how to deal with different ones, right? Because everything has its own things. You can't get drywall. You can't get labor sometimes. You can't get tubs or sinks or baths, shingles, bricks, whatever. I don't even know if people use bricks anymore with everything we build the way it is. But you know what I'm saying? There's all different kinds of issues popping up. That business is great, but there's all these little things that you have to play whack-a-mole with all the time, right?
and then that might be what's going on with lumber too. Is like lumber's not caught on a boat off the shore like Care Bears or something. So you can get it, and so you look all around you and you hear things like, "This is out 6 months, that's out 4 months, that's out 7 months." Then why not? If I got to wait that long for everything else, then why don't I just build my inventory, my lumber inventory, so I'm covered for the next 7 months? I'm not waiting on that. So I think there's some of that. Just because it's been available, people have bought it, and I can't say that they're wrong. I think the when you got trust manufacturers, trusted order files that are out 7 months, and that tells you that some framing packages have got to be bought if they're not bought.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things that the show we the truss players, they were certainly circling around two of the big plate manufacturers' booths, right? Asking if they all laughed and said, instead of giving a truck away, you guys should give away a container of plates.
Yeah, box of plates. Yeah,
Because those things are tighter than they're tough to come by right now, right?
tighter than Dick's hat band. You wanted to say, but you didn't do it, right? I don't know. I never knew what that meant, but it's still kind of.
That mean Dick Tracy's hat band, or
I don't know who Dick is, but he's got a big head
in a tight band.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump over to your guide. Is there anything on the reading section where you talk about accepting supply disruption? Did you want to talk a little bit about that right now?
Yeah, that's just kind of one of those. I was gonna say, we don't know if we said this earlier or not already, but we kind of shoot from the hip on this thing. So we encourage you guys to have throw some questions at us just for fodder. But I think the disruptions have become such a part of normal life. I mean, I can remember talking to several builders back in March and April and May, and they were just absolutely frantic about what the things they couldn't get. You go, what do you mean? You can't just not have siding. You can't just not have underlayment because I've got these houses going, and you just can't leave me hanging like that. So they were just absolutely frantic about what they were going to do about it. And now that's been going on for 9 months, 6 months anyway, and it's gotten to be old hat. I mean, I heard yesterday there's like 140 ships off the coast of California, and everybody goes, yeah, there sure is. And so you get them unloaded, then what's going to happen? There's not 500,000 truckers sitting around waiting to pick up those containers and drop them off two at a piece.
Yeah.
So that supply thing's it's going to take care of itself over time, but I think people are learning to live with it and accept it, and you just pass it along. Because a home builder, for example, can tell his prospective home buyer, like, well, we can build this house in 6 months. But the only problem is we got to wait 7 months to get your windows in your bathtub.
Yeah.
So in your garage door. So you can't really do anything about that. But as far as the things that we're in control of, we can do something about it. And the home buyers have stopped getting mad at the home builders because they have to wait or they're late. It's not like the builders not making the stuff come in because they want to close it and complete it, get it done, move on to the next one, just like everybody else. But I think that acceptance of this supply chain disruption has been so much in the press. Everybody just expects that that's the way it's going to be.
Well, now also you've got the you got the Weather Channel phenomenon going on with lumber too, where one person says, hey, the price of lumber is going up, and then the next person sends out a story in a Twitter and a Facebook and everything starts trending where all of a sudden it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah.
So the 2x4 chart here, let's take a look at that. The 2x4 composite. I think it'll be really interesting when we look at the Southern Pine one, but how skewed is this from the Southern Yellow Pine, or is this really just kind of what can I read into this chart here, Matt?
It's kind of just what you can tell is that we started the market just collapsed from May through August, and it bottomed right about the time that it should. It rallied up in September like it should. What that tells me is just the price continuation tells me that people are continuing to build inventory, or they're not unwinding or absorbing or just looking at their inventory and seeing what's going to do it, or what I've got for coming up here. This kind of tells me everybody's anticipating that business like it is going to continue like it is, and there's no reason to get rid of your inventory if you're selling it, you're making money. And the thing's a bit of a concern now. Lumber prices are starting to move up $30, $40, $50 a week, and kind of back when we were like at $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 before. But I think if you look at a 5% change in the price in a week, it's kind of that's not an uncommon move. But we're talking about $800 lumber now, so we can expect $40 moves, and we can either both up or down. But I still think there's some digestion that's got to happen between now and October. But I mean, the end of October. But I don't think the thing to focus on is what correction have we got coming, but what happens at the end of October, 1st of November. We enter into a time frame when the market historically trends higher, and compared to where we've been, there's lots of room to go higher. So, like Dennis had said, good question. He said we're prepping for a big buy here for the last month, and it doesn't look like we're getting this correction thing. So it may be that maybe we don't get an October correction, but that doesn't change the fact that business from November to February is typically an up market.
Yeah, Dennis just said too, we are not building inventory. We're struggling to find products to keep ahead of our builders' demands. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting, Dennis, if you could just throw up there, like, what are the items that you're having a hard time finding? And I guess the question is it finding them at a right price or just actually finding them? That's my question, right?
And also, Dennis, what's your inventory like, and compared to when if 10 is completely maxed out full, you got no room at all, and one is down to the bare bones, are you closer to that 10 or to the 1 or to the 5, or where would you be in inventory level?
Yeah, we don't, Matt, and I don't mean to pick on you, Dennis, because you'll probably get 100 calls from brokers now after this.
Yeah. I'm
So,
looking for this.
yeah, I heard you were looking for stuff. So yeah, no, we appreciate that. One of the interesting things that Greg talked about yesterday was this, and I wanted to throw this in with the volatility. For years, lumber's yearly move was $130 a thousand for the whole year, right?
Yeah.
So basis $30 was a good basis. That was like 23% of that $130 range, right? Well, when
Mm-hmm.
you have a $1,200 range, 23% is, I wrote this down, so my math may be off a bit, is around $275, right? Now, I know that those numbers don't fit perfectly, but you think about it, we were talking about this basis being blown out so wide. Well, at the big price moves we had, maybe it isn't that wide, right? Dennis
Yeah.
just put up here. We were building inventories. We were struggling to find products. And he answered your question. He said it's a little bit of both. He said, Matt.
Yeah, because I don't mean to imply that people are out aggressively building inventories right now. I think that's already happened, and what's happening now is just topping off, like Dennis is. You get a new order, and it's okay. So I got what I've got, and I've got it sold. So, but I got to go replace it. So it's just the truss business is just killing 2x4s and Southern pines. But also there's been a noticeable pickup in treated lumber sales as well, particularly along the northern border states up near Canada. It's just gotten this is the time of year when those guys up there are really getting their footings in, their foundations in, because they want to get their framing up before the snow flies. So October and November are big months for those further northern dealers. So some of them tell me that October is their best month for lumber shipments. So it's just there's nothing abnormal about it, other than that you can just look at that price fall from week number 20 into week number 36. That tells you that people just absolutely got out of lumber. Everybody wanted to be out of it. They were trying to get rid of their expensive lumber. And so that was a huge inventory reduction or inventory shift. So I think now we got the bucket full. We're just topping it off. And I think that's where we are.
All right, we're going to switch over and bring up the Canadian SPF. We don't always bring this up, but I think there's some interesting talking points on that one, which is on the chart from the week before, or on Friday's chart. So here's the interesting things in strategy. Be aware of the difference between order file, which is less than 2 weeks, versus shipment. So here's the interesting thing. Mike, where's futures trading at for November right now?
$800.
774.50. So 774.50 up 16, right? So that's for delivery in the November order file. Well, right now mills are quoting into that order file. I think I don't know what it is, but it's like $100 below that right now, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that the cash is going to come up to meet that, since we only have about 20 some days before we get into really spot here.
So cash is going to come up $200 in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's my question. So, or the futures is going to come down. Maybe yesterday it was off. I think they were quoting 600-ish, right? I don't know what it is today, but it would almost have to come off $150 a thousand, or mills could deliver into here and just send 100 cars into here, right?
Yeah.
Which they could literally, they're
Some
literally.
chiropractor's going to be going to be sitting on some 2x4s, and it's going to
Well,
be.
that's so.
And, you know, these things, futures and cash, do not have to come together at expiration. There's no rule that says that has to happen. I've seen futures expire 50 to $70 above or below cash before, because the guys just snatched around on the last day. But the implication is that, because if you think about it, the futures car is not going to ship till 2 weeks after the end of the month. So what futures is saying is, they're really saying right now that the lumber you buy off the futures market that you get delivered around the first week of December we're talking about December lumber, and they're saying that yes, the price of lumber could go up $150 between now and the 1st of December, and that's a realistic thing to think about. It's not the same as buying a cash car today, that you buy a cash car that's rolling for 500 or $600. It's a big difference in that, and 2 months from now when you're going to get it.
Yeah. So basically, if somebody put a hedge on that, that's a 20% return, right? If you could put a hedge on that, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, if it works, but if you put a hedge on, at $50 and the thing went out to 150, you're not really liking that idea anymore.
Yeah, but you've talked to the guys in this industry long enough. The guys that hedge only put it on at the top and take it off at the bottom.
That's perfect. Yeah.
At least the ones I talk to have never lost money.
Lose. Yeah.
So
and my favorite one is, you get sell recommendation 1 week and the market goes up $100, and the next piece of advice is take profits.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I've basis traded before, and it's interesting. You got to just the time you make money is usually when you're getting your ass kicked on your futures, right? But you got to be willing to suck it up on that one. Okay, Dennis said if we can spot the dip, we'll put cars in the ground for the next cycle. Part of the issue is the normal cycles aren't normal, and I think that could just be because of the consolidation, people willing to build big inventories now, and where the homes are being built at aren't in the traditional cycle places like the Midwest. They're built pretty much in areas where you can damn near build year round, even though it does get cold a little bit in the Southeast sometimes. But that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I wanted to point out something about this September and October. It's the market typically makes its low either in late August or late October, and whether that happens, you got to kind of take September and October out and put it in I call it bottom chop. And if you can just trade through that period like this, to address Dennis's thing about the cycle, it doesn't matter what happens in September and October in relationship to what happens November through March. If you don't get that down dip in October, you still got to look at the next thing that's going to happen is the market's going to trend higher from the end of November. I mean, the beginning of November. So this period here is going to be it may look like a miss from week 40 to 45 because spruce looks like going more side, or that's OSB's going sideways. But it's just, I'm not trying to make excuses for why the things don't track exactly like you draw them out, but these are certainly weird times, and people are doing weird things and acting. I mean, just like you just said, Dennis, you're not building inventory, but your inventory is already high. You're just trying to keep it where it is. So and the reason is the answer to your question is why the cycle isn't happening is everybody's doing just what you're doing. They're just topping off. They're going back and keeping that inventory high and not reducing it. In October falls because when it falls, it's because of people liquidating inventories to just reassess for the winter. Say, okay, now what do I need to get me to the next little hurdle? And it's just usually a time when the market just backs off and nobody does anything. But this year there's so much promise again from the builders that everybody just doesn't want to be out of inventory.
One thing, Matt, I mean, I had a call last week from a buddy of mine I've done business with for a long time. I'll just refer to him as Mr. K. And he said, one thing I really like about Matt is that he hangs it out there and has an opinion. And I thought that was pretty cool, right? I mean, he goes, look,
it gets lonely out there on that tree limb sometimes, though.
It does. It does. And sometimes it hurts falling down through the branches, doesn't it? But
Yeah, I've done that too. Yeah.
it's like a pachinko machine, if anybody remembers that thing, and you're the ball going down through there. But yeah, no, they really, that was kind of cool. Um, Somebody just asked, what is the front spread? I'm not sitting at my. What's the front spread right now, Mike?
Negative 36 last.
Negative 36 last on the front spread. If you want to know more about the future side of it, Greg Kuda and Mike do a show every Tuesday called Lumber Futures from the Free Seats at 12 o'clock Central, and they really go over a lot of this in detail and dial it in. So I suggest you sign into that one, because if I start telling you about futures, I think I'll get my license pulled if I still have it, if it's still in play. So
if I start talking about it, I'm just going to be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Just until basically do the opposite of what I say, and you'll probably make some money. So no, this is OSB up here, Matt. And here's the interesting thing on that. So we have a ton of plywood and OSB listed on the platform to sell right now, and we've been doing a lot of that. I've noticed a lot of inventory in OSB and plywood. But with that said, one of the big mills in the Southeast said they were out into December the other day. Now, look, at somebody selling on here told me that, so I don't know if that means that they're out. There's still contracts. They're basing this off of outtake now from the boxes, but nonetheless, OSB.
Or is it just shipment? Maybe is it transportation? I kind of find that everybody that's got wood says, "Yeah, I've got the wood, but I'm probably gonna be 3 weeks getting a truck."
Man, you know what? I never thought about that, but Matt Beamer the other day told me, with prompt wood on the ground right now, he's been in the business forever, and he said, I finally got sick, and I don't want to speak exactly. I'll try to regurgitate. He goes, I finally we kept going over to my freight and saying, easy loads. Now we're taking 2 or 3 weeks. He finally said, if there's wood on the ground, I'll get it to you when it gets there, because he had to quit making excuses up on the trucking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and they're talking about now that helping everything at the ports get released. So there's going to be plenty of stuff on the docks, but all that's going to do is that's going to make things worse in the trucking industry, because if people are starting to pay these guys, $30 a mile to come haul that stuff off the ports, which with Christmas coming and the holiday season's coming, people are going to want to get that wood. They're going to those products. They're going to pay premium. So, getting your wood off the dock or getting your wood moved from anywhere might be difficult, just because the drivers are. You can see a mass exodus of truck drivers just hauling ass to California. You go like, getting in line, hook me up, brother. Where am I going?
Yep, exactly. I just had one. I had one person listing on MX just ping me and said he has some trucks listed on the platform. He wants to move some 1932 Southern Yellow Pine plywood and some 3/4 TNG OSB and some 7/16. So anybody on the platform, sign in and bid on that stuff for him, because he wants to move the 3/4 TNG today out of the Southeast. I think it's out of one of the Alabama mill. I'll take a look later, but that's just a little plug there I wanted to do. But yeah, no, freight has definitely become tight. Let's go down to look at the last one here. Let's look at the framing package index. Matt, you said there was a typo. What do we got to be careful of here?
Well, look at the very first number in the area 1 column. Yeah, it says like $47,000.
Yes. Yep. I got you.
Yeah, that number is a number that self-calculates. And when my data entry girl put the thing in, she just didn't put that number in correctly. So it's about half of what it is actually. So
it is the California market. Couldn't that just be accounting for taxes?
Could be. Yeah. Gas prices. Yeah.
So what else what else should we read into here on the framing package index?
Well, we can see that. Just looking at the graphs, you can see that the cost to your supplier, if you're a builder, is rising. Your cost for your framing package is bottomed out. It's going to be working a little higher. But still, you look back for the last 12 months, and there's no reason to think that lumber is going to be a deterrent for housing starts or permits or completions or whatever you need lumber for. There's price is not an issue. I do see something happening though in the truss industry we picked up last week on it.
What's that, Matt?
Builders are doing the very same thing to truss manufacturers right now that they did to their lumber suppliers back in March. and that was like, we've got so much business, we don't have to worry about selling our homes. Whatever you do, don't let me run out of trusses. And so the trust industry's never had an order file that's like this. I mean, some guys are, I mean, 7 months to wait on a trust. Usually you're talking about 7 weeks for the big order file, but some people they're just saying, like, I got to book it out that far because I just don't know what's going to happen in between. It's the same as lumber mills. You're into the area of you don't know, so you're just guessing.
Yeah.
And what happens with that is you get people pile on and go, like, if I'm 7 months out, I got to get all my stuff is in between that covered. So we just get overbought, overcovered, double bought, double covered. And I think that's what's happening right now. And I think from a long-term perspective, we could see this market peak early next year and have it's be a good year probably for demand. I mean, for building, but I'm not so sure. I think lumber's it's just positioned wrong. There's just too much of it. It looks like there's not a lot of the mills because everybody's been stuffing their walls. So if you could kind of imagine, like, the mill's just doing the same thing every day, just selling and selling and selling, whatever, 105% of production, 95% of production. But it's more than what's getting going, the more just going to the job site. The job site's taking on, they're completing 1.3, but somewhere there's this 1.7 million lumber inventory sitting somewhere that's waiting to go to the job site. So
Dennis just brought up a great point too, and I heard this especially with floor joists and stuff. Trust demand may be driven by lack of EWP, right? In some cases,
Yeah.
people would. Yeah, so I know 2 months ago, talking to one of the guys in St. Louis that was shipping stuff all the way to Ohio, it was floor trusses because the EWP couldn't get up there. So Dennis, that's a great, absolutely, probably one of the big things, and that EWP.
Yeah, because people that are preparing ahead now can change to open web floor trusses. But if you got a job going and you need EWP, you can't mix and match. Kind of got to get it, stick with what you got. But there is a huge shift from going to open web floor trusses. Just and the openings were like an issue, and where the electrical and plumbing needs to go. But these guys are realizing they got to work around that, and they can work around it, and they do. But I think we've seen a place where EWP here has just lost some market share, and the floor truss business has gained market share just because of its ability to respond and provide.
So Matt, what are you hearing about? Did you ever we'll kind of just want to chat. Did you ever build together your little consortium of that you were going to put together your little your focus group, or that you were talking about doing?
We're still working on that. The next thing I got going is I'm gonna put together a group of 8 or 10 industry specialists, a treater, a truss manufacturer, wholesale distributor, builder, turnkey framer, buying group. It's going to be about a 10-minute little spiel about what went right in 2021 and what went wrong, and what do you think that's going to do to influence how your sector, not your personal business, but how will that affect your sector going forward? So we're doing that on November the 2nd, and that's going to kind of be I've been working more on that, but I do need to get the focus group together for a small update meeting here pretty soon. But
no, that's cool. So look at, I mean, we'll kind of wrap it up here, but it's a pretty amazed what two guys with some cheap equipment like this cheap ring light and a few other things can do. We don't have those fancy $10,000 umbrella lights, a producer, and 75 cameras and microphones. I love it.
Mine.
Man. Yeah,
that's my light.
Right back at you, brother. Right back at you. I love it, and we're having some good feedback, and hopefully we're helping people. And because they certainly, we wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for the support of the people that watch and the feedback we get. With that said, we want you to sign up on mxlumber.com. That's mxlumber.com and register. There is no cost to be on our platform. You can look at numbers. We only charge you something if you buy it or sell it, and you can be both a buyer and a seller. And by all means, also sign up for Matt's report, Layman's Lumber Guide, because you're building quite a following, Matt, and I'm glad to be riding your coattails on that and kind of help get a little residual.
Well, I want to encourage everybody to how easy it is. Like I've got my MX Exchange on a separate computer beside my desk. So, and I imagine if I was a buyer and I'm sitting here and I got a call from a mill or a wholesaler, and you say you're looking for a car of 2x6, 104 and 5/8, for example, and go, here's your price. You go, okay, hang on just a second. You reach over your MX Exchange, you put in that same item, you look for a bid, and before you buy it, you go check like, let me just make sure that I'm not paying $20 too much, or is this a $20 better deal than what I can buy? Get out there from real time prices. So I mean it's a great tool whether you buy with it or use it or not. At least you should use it to check yourself to make sure you're not overpaying or that you're really getting a deal that you think you are. And the more that you guys do that, the more people, the more suppliers are going to get on there and want to participate as well.
And look at, I mean, as I made a post on social media last week with a target on my back, right? And it's interesting what you hear face to face versus on the phone. Like we have people out there telling their people, their members and all that, or people not to use us. And which is a shame because I think intelligent people know that they should use every resource they can. But unfortunately, I try to use my mom's rule of thumb, never say anything that you don't think can come back to you. Although I haven't always used that in my life and it always does come back to me. But when I hear things like that, I'm disappointed, but I also know that means that we're over the target. We're doing something right. So
yeah, people have said for years that I don't buy from wholesalers. I don't buy for whatever reason. I don't trust them, whatever, don't need them. But everybody that I know in the lumber business, I mean, everybody that's been successful in the lumber business has some brokers in their pocket. Because brokers take risks that you don't take. And
yep, they do a great job.
That's their job, is just to risk transfer. And if you do just like this, they'll say like, I would never use MX because of whatever it is. And it's just cutting off one of your supply legs, and that just doesn't make sense.
Hey, there's some successful brokers that are on our platform. I mean, we're going to the NOLA show in Louisville in 2 or 3 weeks, and my big push is going to be there. If you're a broker on a floor and you get on this, all the customers can be yours and all the mills, right? You don't have to break it up into. Just think about it. If I'm a young person at some wholesale company somewhere, whether it's a national one, a regional one, or just in a state, and I'm looking for an edge, I'm getting on here because I don't want to deal with the 7 people that are going to make me learn in 3 to 10 years, right? I want to make money now, and I want to get information now. So if I was advising young people, which I do, I would say get on here because this will give you an edge. And listen to Matt and Ashley because that'll give you an edge. And Dennis said you both look marvelous. Dennis, I appreciate that.
Dennis is flirting. I don't appreciate that at all.
We'll end it on that note, Matt. So have a great week, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Thanks for coming.